Ilan, thank you so much for joining me in the LSI studio.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit about what you're doing at CAPS Medical.
You know that cancer claims over 9.5 million lives each year. And all the existing cancer therapies strive to do the same thing. They want to maximize damage to the tumor while minimizing damage to the healthy tissue surrounding it. The deeper you get inside the body, the more elusive the target gets. And eventually, the vital tissue is being damaged through this procedure. At CAPS Medical, we have developed a technology that can selectively and very precisely target the tumor without damaging the healthy tissue surrounding it through minimally invasive procedures. By that, we can actually eliminate many of the life-altering side effects of the existing technologies.
Tell me, how are you using minimally invasive technologies to selectively destroy tumors?
So our proprietary treatment is called NTAP, and it's based on non-thermal atmospheric plasma, which is a stream of an ionized gas which we deliver directly to the tumor. So we take in a helium, we pass it through a very specific magnetic field, and we get him a stream which is actually quite pleasant to touch. You can touch it with your own hands. It doesn't cut, it doesn't ablate, it doesn't cause any thermal or other damage to the healthy tissue. This stream generates what is called reactive oxygen and nitrogen species. From this point on, for biologists, it's really straightforward. For me, it took time to understand.
Yeah.
These reactive species actually can selectively generate stress only to cancerous cells. It mostly relates to the cancer structure and its ability to interact with its environment. Once they generate the stress, the cells is basically based to program its self-demise. So they go through a cascade of what is called a pre-programmed cell death and apoptosis. And that process cascades an effect in which the immune response is specifically targeting similar cells. So basically, it didn't identify it as a cancer cell before, but once this process begins, the immune system knows that there's a tumor there, and I know how to eliminate it. And then it goes and specifically goes deep inside the tissue and specifically targets similar cells in the surrounding areas. So basically, once you get your device near the tumor, you can only apply the treatment superficially, and the effect will propagate deep inside the tissue and eliminate every cancer cell in the area.
So how exactly is that possible? Is it through electrophoresis?
Actually, electrophoresis is an energy device which destroys all type of cells.
So this is different.
This is different.
Okay.
And the benefit here of CAPS Medical, and I'm really glad you asked this question, is that this is actually the only technology out there that works like a selective drug through a medical device, and with the cost associated with the medical device and not with the developing drug. So we're actually using a device, a catheter, which is introduced through a working channel of a minimally invasive tool. It generates this plasma field near the tumor and elicits an environment which is toxic to the tumor, but it's benign to everything else. And from this point on, we let the body to heal himself, because we are triggering a fact that marks the tumor for the immune system. So at the end of the treatment, the tumor is still there, but you know, it's a dead cell walking.
It just dies off?
It just dies off after a period of several months, and we have demonstrated in a very successful clinical study, which I believe we'll discuss. And just to make sure, you know, the use of non-thermal plasma in selectively destroying cancer cells has been around for many, many years. It's been used for decades for other treatments like wound healing and additional modalities. And for the past 15 years, it has been extensively used to selectively target cancer cells by several companies out there. The problem is that the existing devices on the market today, because of very high energy requirement, result in being just too large to be used inside the body. Unfortunately, this is where most of the tumors are. And this is exactly the breakthrough of CAPS Medical. So our proprietary technology basically allows us, for the first time, to generate this selective NTAP treatment as a type of a flexible small diameter catheter. So now we can come to a standard procedure room in the same way the doctors are used to minimally invasively access the tumor. We're not changing anything. They're accessing it the same way they used to do with their existing tools. We're just using it as a highway to get to the tumor. And then instead of resecting, cutting, ablating, and doing all the damage they don't want to inflict, they just applying a very benign procedure, completely painless, by the way. We use it on our hands without even, it tickles a little bit. It's maybe quite pleasant for a defined period of time, and that's it. And the rest is leaving the body to heal itself until the tumor is gone.
You mentioned that plasma energy has been around, it's been used in medicine before, but you guys have sort of unlocked the secret. Is that too much of a secret to share with us?
No, not at all. I think that we're very proud of our humans, and I think you asked a question which is basically a key of innovation. Why did you think about something that nobody else thought before? And the answer is I wasn't the one who thought about it. The technology was originally developed by a group of very bright scientists in the Israeli Technion and Rambam Medical Center, the largest medical center in the north of Israel, who came together with an objective to find a minimally invasive solution that can target tumors endoscopically. They look around, they saw this amazing technology called non-thermal plasma, and they said, okay, let's see what the limitation is. The limitation is that they are working like any other surgical devices with their limitation, where they generate a lot of energy and then try to spread out to cool it down. We can't do that. We need to come in touch with the body. We're ingressing fluids. We have so much restrictions that existing surgical therapies just can't avoid. Let's find a concept in which we will do just that thing, but we'll do it perfectly. So this design was initially designed to do one thing, to endoscopically deliver non-thermal plasma. Then an engineer come in place, a recovering engineer, like I mentioned. I have a technical background, but I've been in the medical device field for the last 15 years, basically doing all possible positions across the operation and commercial spectrum of executive positions in the company. And identifying the opportunity, I teamed up with an amazing team of engineers and scientists working at CAPS today. And we took this basic idea, which basically allows to very efficiently generate energy that can be delivered through very narrow conductors. Then we just repacked it again, and we turned out to have the device we have in our hands today.
Tell me about how that's now being applied in human research, as you were talking about earlier.
In our first of its kind multi-center clinical study, we have treated over 35 tumors across 20 patients suffering from a very nasty disease called non-muscle invasive bladder cancer, also known as NMIBC. Actually, NMIBC is a disease of the whole bladder, which appears as a tumors which pop out throughout the patient's lifetime. There are over 1.5 million patients suffering from the disease worldwide. This is the sixth most common cancer in the world. And what's so characteristic about it, that it just doesn't go away. It's been treated and retreated by resecting the tumor by a procedure called TURBT, in which the bladder is damaged, and then complementing the study by a series of very painful and present intravesical installations. And still, they get 80% recurrence rate, which means in 8 out of 10 patients, the tumor returns. So in our clinical study, we have replaced this painful and damaging resection by a single treatment through which we introduce our device through a standard cystoscope, which is the endoscope used to access the bladder. We paint the tumor with a non-thermal plasma, and then we would come back 3 weeks following the procedure. In 98% of cases, the tumor was gone. Wow. The only tumor that wasn't gone just shrunk and was resected for further evaluation. But across the procedure, unlike the standard of care, we've seen no perforations, no bleeding. The bladder wall remained so much intact, it was very difficult for us to even find the place where it was applied. So we preserved a lot of bladders. Hopefully down the road, we will prove additional things rather than resecting, because it's not the only advantage of the technology. It's not only resecting with less side effects. We are working today to get this device even smaller, so it can be applied through a tooling used in an outpatient setup. So instead of using anesthesia, which is used, by the way, only to apply the endoscope, the procedure itself is painless. But by getting the device smaller, we can use actually tooling which can be applied into the bladder without anesthesia at all. So the patients who are usually coming to the doctor's office, today they're only inspected. If there's a tumor there, they've been referred to the center. Instead of that, they will come to the office, they will be inspected. If they find a tumor, which they will because this is a very recurrent disease, They just treat it in place. The doctor gets reimbursed for it, which is great. The patient doesn't have to go through anesthesia, doesn't suffer from pain or bleeding, and returns to a completely functional life several hours following the procedure, and everybody's happy. He comes back several months later, they find another tumor, which is unfortunate, but it will happen eventually. They treat it again, and the whole procedure goes over and over. And the most important thing is that the bladder wall remains intact. It remains functional. There's no scarring, there's no perforation, there's no rehospitalization. We have to remember, most of the patients aren't young athletes. Most of them are mature population who doesn't suffer through anesthesia very well. And we're looking to avoid it in the future. Now, once this device is being widely used, we will be also able to follow the data and see what our immune response is actually doing to reduce the recurrence rate and to reduce the disease progression, which today stands at approximately 30% of these low-grade tumors being progressed to something much more violent, much more aggressive. If we can prove that, then it will change the whole way the solid tumors are treated. And this is only in MIBC. We have to remember, worldwide, there are over 19 million new cases discovered worldwide over a wide range of solid tumors or tumors in general. And today, based on our preclinical study, none of the tested human cell lines showed any kind of resistance to NTAP treatment, which means that NMIBC is our leading indication today, and this will be our initial commercial indication, but this is only the beachline for us. We already have demonstrated our ability to deliver this technology in lungs, in airways, in other modalities, inside the esophagus, in the stomach, in the GI tract, in large animal models, obviously, but combined with the preclinical data that was gathered through biological research, we only need to deliver. And by the way, it uses more or less the same tool that we use for bladder cancer. So the R&D effort there will be relatively small after we complete our setting up for commercialization of the initial device, but the clinical applications are endless.
Those clinical results in NIMBC are extremely promising, and it sounds like this technology is going to offer a lot of hope, not just to those patients, but to patients with other solid tumor cancers, as you mentioned, esophageal, lung. Are you guys able to get into those tumors and treat those?
So, one of the challenges of being a CEO of an early stage company is to keep your focus, because you want to do everything.
Sure.
We have spoken with hundreds of doctors from different disciplines, and the meeting is always ended the same way. This is amazing, I want to do it. It's very lucrative for us to spread our energy around, but we have to be laser focused on our initial indication. And just remember, for NMIBC alone, there are more than 500,000 patients suffering from the disease in the US alone. So our progress moving forward consists of several considerations. Obviously, our main effort today goes into the NMIBC project. But the technology which is developed today has to do almost no adaptation for 5 to 6 different types of cancer to start working with them immediately. And this is actually what we're doing in early feasibility studies in parallel. In addition to that, a small modification will allow us to get to smaller and deeper tumors. For example, let's take lungs, for example. So the existing device will allow us to cover the majority of the lung. The device which we developed for the outpatient setup will allow us to cover the whole lung. So it's kind of a walker process. Like every other device, we will go forward and improve. And the indication we will choose will be derived from very simple factors. We need to address a very clear unmet need. With a large market, we can also utilize our potential with, and with the right partner who is active in this market and can help us out, because this is actually where we are today. So the company is now raising funds to step into our next level, which will be a pivotal study, which will be conducted here in the US, aiming for regulatory clearance. Now, with the technology is proven, we're tackling the regulatory clearances in US, in Europe, in China, in Japan, and in other developing countries as well. And this will require some time for us to get there. Now, we're not going to wait and sit and wait until the study is completed. We're doing this for the initial indication, but meanwhile, we're progressing all the pipeline to catch up. So once we hit the market running, we'll already have several indications waiting to be introduced in the same similar way. And like I've mentioned, there are several clinical studies for feasibility for other cancers already taking shape and form to be executed once we find the timing is right and the right partner joins our company in the next funding round, which is currently ongoing.
There are other technologies today, apart from RF ablation, which has been around for a long time, that have been used to treat solid tumors, for lack of a better word. Pulse field ablation comes to mind, aquablation comes to mind. How does your technology compare to some of these other energy sources that are being developed today or used today even to treat solid tumors?
This is a great question. And I wish there were so few cancer types that we only need one technology to treat them all. But the main advantage in CAPS Medical over everything that exists today from a market perspective, we don't ablate, we don't destroy. Once you destroy, you will destroy the good cells with the bad cells. Some of these technologies can preserve several structures, but eventually you will still be limited by not ablating the healthy tissue. And this is where CAPS Medical comes in play. You don't have to be selective. You don't have to be precise. You don't have to put a needle through a tumor. If it's something superficial and it sits on a critical organ like an airway, like a major blood vessel, you can. Technically, you can apply other modalities, but you will damage everything around you. Here, you don't have to be precise and find every single cell and make sure you take it all out. You cover the whole area, and the technology will focus on the cancer cell that it needs to distract. Another advantage is that the manual skills required to use this procedure don't fall outside of the toolkit of the doctors who are working with other modalities today. We're not bringing any new requirements to the table. We're not changing the access to the tumor. We're not changing the treatment length or procedure. We're just making it simpler when he's already there. And we see it in our clinical study. We have doctors who have never tried to use TURBT resection before, really, residents who have just joined our primary investigator, taking the wheels in their own hand and performing the procedure from a first run with a very simple indication because it's very, very intuitive. The console itself, it takes off, the device we use to working today. You only need to set the treatment time and press the lever, and the console will do the rest. It will monitor the pressure, it will monitor the amount of energy delivered to the tumor, it will count your time, it will notify you if something is wrong, you need to get closer, it will tell you to get closer, you need to get farther away from the tumor, it will tell you to get farther away. It's very intuitive, and you really just have to understand what is the tissue you want to treat in a general sense, and you can really do really little damage with that.
Israel is becoming a major hub for medtech in the world. Could you speak a little bit about what is enabling this innovation to emerge and thrive in the country?
Well, first of all, thank you for flattering us. I think it's not the only ecosystem that results in a lot of innovation. There are several hubs worldwide, and I think the common factor in all of them is the proximity and the interaction between the different parts. I can give you an example. I'm walking around down the halls, and I think that I'm familiar with that majority of the faces, both from Israel and from outside. MedTech is a very narrow space which leans on the same talent. And when these talents are 5 minutes drive one from another, and Israel is a small country, it proliferates excellence, it pushes you towards excelling, and you have somebody to lean on. There's a lot of camaraderie, and you see it around both in crises and in proliferation. Obviously, there's a lot of ego around, like in any other industry, but eventually when you need somebody to step in and help you out, it will be very easy to find this person. And in Israel, you know everybody, you know exactly who to reach out. Many of our entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs who have done that before and are willing to share their experience to help you not to fall into the same pits as they have fallen before. So I think it eventually results in the environment which is very tolerable to trying out new things, even if they not all succeed from the first time. This is something we, by the way, very much implement in our company as well. We urge people to try things out, obviously before they get them into the clinical studies. But this is how you get innovation. You have to try it out several times, not to be afraid to fail, and expand your boundaries. You asked me before, how come you invented this and nobody else did? Many people were working on it. The question is, how far are you willing to go with that, and how much sacrifice you're willing to take to get to this point? And apparently for us, it's a bit more than for other sectors. But again, we're not the only ones there. There are amazing innovators out there from all over the world.
You know, it is certainly important to have a strong network to rely on. It's great that you guys are a part of one. Are there other strategic partners that you're currently working with, maybe on the clinical side or in the business development side of things?
So actually, we have a strategic play involved with Campus Medical from its inception. We were incepted in one of the incubators of one of the larger players, and we have been tapping on this resource of endless professionals helping us focusing on this first indication, pointing us in the right directions, and helping us avoiding going into niches which seem to be very lucrative but may not be as useful when we get to the market. Now, as part of our funding round, we're approached by many strategics. We're actually in a due diligence process by several of them who are looking at this technology from different angles. One looks at it from a bladder cancer experience, other looks at it from lung cancer, but eventually the selling point is the same. Today, the technology of discovering the tumors has evolved so much that you rarely see these golf-sized balls you used to see 5 days ago. The tumors are usually small, they're discovered early on, and they demand a solution which can remove the small tumor without damaging the whole body around it. And this is exactly where CAPS Medical solution comes in play.
It must be incredibly rewarding then to be a part of the development of this technology that so many players, probably a lot of patients, are extremely interested to follow the progress and hear about your continued success as you move this technology to the market and into new indications.
Definitely. I think that for medical device in general, it's very easy to find a purpose to what you're doing. For cancer treatment, it's the easiest thing to do. And we see it in our clinical studies. So initially, we decided to treat each patient only once because we know that the disease will eventually come back in other locations, hopefully, which actually happens because none of the treated tumors has returned. But the tumors will appear in other locations, so we said, let's begin and just let's see how the study progresses, looking forward to what we're going to do next. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 15 patients in, with the time passing and some tumors appearing in other locations, the patients are coming back to the doctor and say, we don't want to go resection anymore. After we've tried this one, I get home the same day. I didn't suffer from all the terrible side effects. And since I know that it will come back anyway later, I don't want to be resected anymore. So we actually came back and amended the protocol to allow us to treat the same patients in other locations as part of a clinical study. And actually we have several, relatively few, but we have a few of these patients undergoing several procedures for different tumors each time because they no longer wanted to suffer what standard of care has to offer today.
It's an amazing improvement to the quality of life for these patients, certainly.
And for the doctors, because a suffering patient is eventually coming back to his doctor and he wants a solution. He points fingers, and this is the nature of the disease. The doctor does the best job he can, but this is the cancer. It will come back.
Ilan, I want to thank you so much for joining me in the studio and telling me about the work you're doing at CAPS Medical.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure, and it was a great venue and a great platform to meet with all the players and strategics in one place.
The pleasure is all ours.
Thank you so much.